Fortunately, Marcia was talking to a researcher named Durama Balashi. Dr. Balashi is the co-discoverer of HHV6 and its two variants, A and B, which are very different viruses, at NCI. And he wanted to test that with a CFITS patient. So, hello, that was me. And Dr. Balashi was just simply wonderful. We brought him 6 vials of heparin green top tubes that were still warm, and he did his stuff, and he called my house. My daughter answered. She was 16. She said, my mom's in bed. He said, leave her there. Make her stay in bed. Her lymphocytes are littered with HHV6 variant A everywhere. She is very sick. I'm going to stop right here and say something. We are not fatigued people. We are sick. We're very, very sick. Please get that point. I would never have thought of saying fatigue to my doctor because that's not what I felt. I was sick. Okay, good. Now, we're going to skip. Well, okay, a second. One thing I want to comment is that when I fell apart, I used to do something I called the pause. At first, I could walk across the room. I would start across the room, and then I'd stop, like halt the pause on the VCR. And my son was taking biomechanics at University of Delaware at the time, and it happened the biomechanics professor knew me. And Eric said, could this be deconditioning? The biomechanics professor said, nobody gets that deconditioned that fast. Now, so Dr. Balashi found in the fall of 1998 that I had HHV6 variant A. I also found I had the 37 kDa RNase L defect. I knew that those were 2 of 3 markers that Dr. Peterson was having success with Ampligen because I had my spies everywhere. So I went on Ampligen. Within 6 months, my biomarkers were gone. I started in February. By the summer, I could drive a car again. I was walking without a cane. I walked barefoot on a beach. But I can't tell you how wonderful that was. I read the newspaper, and on September 5th, 1999, I danced with my son at his wedding. All things I had not thought I would ever be able to do. Okay, we're going to have to jump skip real fast. On Ampligen, biomarkers go away, I get better. Off Ampligen, biomarkers come back, I get worse. After I had that one little learning lesson, I wasn't going to get off it ever. My family had decided we'd incorporated it into our income base. My husband has a way of earning money, he's good at it, and that was it. Unfortunately, the FDA had other plans. The head of my practice died. The FDA took the study away. They wouldn't give it back, and I thought I might have a year. I only had 7 months. In September 2008, I'm happily skipping down the street. The manhole cover's been taken away. I go into the manhole cover, I am back in the sewer. It's that fast, it's that awful. Fortunately, I already had an appointment with Dr. Peterson, who I was now seeing as my specialist, so I didn't have Dr. Wallace anymore. And I was going to see him at the end of September. So over the course of 2008, 2009, this is what I had. I had the 37 kDa RNase L. My natural killer cell function was 2%. I had an abnormal cytokine pattern, but I don't know which one, I'm sorry. I was positive at first for Epstein-Barr. All of my crashes always started with Epstein-Barr. Then it would go away and it would come back. I always had, during the crash, once I was sick again, HHV6 variant A, and then Dr. Peterson found I also had HHV7, cytomegalovirus, and 3 strains of Coxsackie B. I don't know if they're the right strains. I'm going to have to go home and look that up. My VO2 max test was 14.5, below 15. I had an abnormal SPECT scan. Now, what are the odds that all that would be going on and that it's unrelated? What are the odds that all those symptoms I had were unrelated to the markers I gave you and the diseases I had? I don't think the odds are great that there's no relationship. I forgot one test. I also was in the original science study. I tested positive for XMRV by both antibodies and in the serum. Maybe that's involved too. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I'm way too past the point where we can ask, what's the cause? Personally, I think there's cofactors. I think you have to have a mix of causes myself, but I don't know. What I want is treatment for people. And I happen to do well on Ampligen. At this point, my family was getting desperate. We tried an antiviral, and my liver said no. So I moved to Incline Village, Nevada, away from my husband of 35 years, who supports me and keeps me going. And I've been back on Ampligen for a year, and that is why I'm standing here talking to you, because last year I wasn't able to come to the CIPSAC meeting. I was too sick. I did testify by phone, but I couldn't stand like this. Right, now I'm going to switch gears again. Here's this book. This is called Lost Voices. The first picture in this book is of a girl named Naomi. Naomi got sick at the age of 13. She is now 30. Naomi's picture, well, I'm trying to find it. Well, most people don't know this. I know a lot of people who got sick as teenagers and are entering their 40s. I got sick at 44. Oh, sorry, yeah. I got sick at 44. I married the love of my life. I had 2 kids. I have 2 grandchildren. I had a really good career. I'm a little sorry that it couldn't go further than it did, but it was okay. And I was able to get a research position, so it must have been okay. But I know so many people through internet who never did get married, never did have kids, never had a career. They never had a life. All they've had is this disease. And that is sinful. That is wrong. That should not be. Now, there are 1 million adults in the United States with this disease. 150,000 have a diagnosis. Where are the other 850,000 people? If we use the ME literature, there are 25% who are like I was, housebound or bedridden. 250,000 people, where are they? Where are the children? We know they're there. The only ones we see are the ones whose parents are professionals and have been able to get them help and diagnosis. And the school boards dump on these kids and their parents all the time. They put kids in foster care for the sin of having CFS, and then you have to go rescue them. It's a nightmare for them. But to me, what's important is the kids. Casey Farrow had myocarditis. He had a virus in his heart muscle for years. The autopsy showed both old and new scarring. But he had a diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome. You know, what's the, don't be silly. You just think you have what your mother has. I'd ignore it. I do not have chronic fatigue syndrome, according to the CDC's website. I do have myalgic encephalomyelitis, according to the World Health Organization's and the Ramsey definition. I do have ME/CFS, according to the Canadian definition. I would say I have, but you know, myalgic encephalomyelitis is a British Commonwealth name. Let's use the name that Alex Shelikoff chose in the United States instead of myalgic encephalomyelitis. Epidemic neuromyasthenia. That was the United States name for this disease. Wonder why they quit using it. This is a contagious disease at some course in its illness. This is a terrible disease. This disease attacks children. This disease has killed people's children. Washington, D.C., what part of serious do you not understand? What part of urgent do you not understand? As my daughter is now sick at 30. She's going to be seeing Dr. Montoya in a month. And I have a 7-year-old granddaughter, and I hope she doesn't end up with this disease too. How long do we have to go through this, and what does it take? Because let me tell you something that we learned in public health a long time ago. Diseases know no boundaries between class or education or anything else. And anybody in this room can end up with what I have. And so can your children. If you don't put a stop to this, that is what will happen. There will be more cluster outbreaks. There will be more people sick. Got to stop it. So for Casey Farrow, for Alison Hunter, the Alison Hunter Foundation suggested this from Australia. Alison Hunter was a 19-year-old girl who died of complications from the disease. For Alison Hunter, for Casey Farrow, for Sophia Mirza, for all the children who get this disease. If you don't want to do anything for us adults, for God's sakes, do something for the children. Children have died from it. It is serious. I think you people are on the right track. I think you mean well. I want you to understand this is not minor. Please help us. Thank you very much.